scripture this morning begins a familiar story. As we read it, I'll be reading the words in yellow and invite you to read aloud those in white print. This is how the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph. But before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit.
Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law, and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly.
But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit.
She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins.
Abram had a plan. He left his father and his family's heritage, moved to a new land with his flocks and his herds and his wife, in that order, was going to build a new dynasty. But they had no child, no one to inherit, no one to take what was started and make it prosper, to, in fact, make it eternal. He and his wife Sarah had not been able to conceive. And so Abram had a plan. In those days, of course, there were no advanced reproductive technologies. There was only one way to conceive a child, and they did what was a traditional alternative in finding a surrogate mother. They had a child. Abram had his plan. But then something else happened. But then something else happened. And Sarah became pregnant. And Sarah had a child. And their son Isaac would inherit the family business, the family promise, and through his children and his children's children would grow the people of God. Abram had a plan, but something else happened. Centuries passed. Moses was a Hebrew child but raised as Egyptian royalty, enjoying all the privileges anyone could imagine in those days, while his brothers and sisters suffered under cruel slavery. Until one day when Moses lost his temper upon seeing an Egyptian beat a Hebrew slave, and Moses kills the Egyptian. He becomes terribly anxious, worried, frightened that he will be discovered, and so he flees, runs away right into another choice opportunity, where again he finds himself in the midst of a family of privilege. And he spends decades helping his father-in-law build the family business, living comfortably, prospering, peacefully. Moses had a plan to remain comfortable, to see his children and his children's children emerge. Moses had a plan. But then something else happened. And Moses finds himself back in Egypt, helping to lead his people out of slavery, helping to guide them through the wilderness as they discovered who they were and prepared them to emerge into a promised land. Moses had a plan, but then something else happened. Centuries passed. The people of God were no longer content to be ruled by priests and prophets. They wanted a king like all the other countries around them. And so Saul was anointed as their first king. And early on, Saul came to notice the young boy David. David, filled with tenacity and courage and faith. David, as he grew, would become a prominent leader among Saul's inner circle. David would become a very gifted military leader. He would go and conquer for king and country. And after a particularly glorious victory, David had a plan. David would return to Jerusalem to glorify king and country again, to show to King Saul just how loyal and faithful he was, how devoted he was to serve the king. David had a plan to grow closer and to be able to serve even more fully. But then something else happened. Seemingly overwhelmed by paranoia and jealousy, Saul, instead of throwing gratitude at David, threw a spear at David, not once, but twice, and suffice it to say that changed their relationship significantly. David had planned to be a powerful servant to the king, but something else happened. And David would eventually emerge as the new leader, as the beginning of a dynasty in Jerusalem, a legend for thousands of years. Joseph seemingly had a normal, humble life. His work as a carpenter must have stabilized well enough that he thought he could now afford a family. Made arrangements and was betrothed to a young lady in the village, as was their custom. Joseph had plans to have that family, to raise it as a traditional family, to build his business, to have an ongoing success and comfort, to enjoy the simple prosperity of an honest man in a friendly community. But then something else happened. And Mary, his betrothed, is discovered to be with child. I remember growing up, it always said she was with child because you didn't say the word pregnant out loud. Times changed. She was with child. Joseph had enough knowledge of biology to know it wasn't his child. And by rights, by heritage, he could drive her to the edge of town where she could be stoned to death. When a betrothed cheated on her husband, it was adultery. And if not that, he certainly could have brought her up into the public square for great humiliation. She could have been chastised, she could have been shunned, she could have been excluded from the community. But for her sake, for his sake, he's going to simply end things quietly and move on. He had plans. First to prosper, then to just shut it all up and move on. He had plans. But then something else happened. And the child was born that changed history, that changed us. It seems that life is what happens when we're busy planning something else. And often has very little regard to our plans, to our dreams, to our wishes, to our pride, to our comfort. Life happens, and while I personally do not believe that everything that happens is an act of God or somehow within the will of God, I do believe that some things are. That every now and then, and more often than perhaps we might know, a God thing happens. Just when we were planning one thing, but something else happens. And lives are changed. Whether it was Abram giving birth to a people, or Moses setting them free to help them rediscover who they were, or David pulling them together and uniting them in a celebration of who they were, or even Joseph, who simply believed what he was told and did what he could. Despite their plans, it seems a God thing happened. And God things happen after the but. I had these plans, but then something else happened. We had these plans as a couple, as a family, as a church, as a community, as a nation. We had these plans, but then something else happened. And while it may not always be a God thing, I think it happens often enough to inspire us in those moments when our plans have just been shattered and trampled upon. In the midst of our grief and our anger and our shattered pride, to still keep our eyes open, to still keep our ears open, to still keep our mind open to the possibilities that might emerge when we had plans, but something else happens. No matter how we might feel in the moment, perhaps God has a good enough track record to encourage us to at least be on the lookout for a God thing. Let us pray. In those moments of God when it feels like life is less something that we live and more something that's happening to us, we count on your grace and upon the love of those people you send our way to help us find balance, to help us recover from our disappointments and our losses and our frustration, and find hope again, to be able to walk into each new day with a hopeful spirit, as if we can expect to see a God as we move through this season of Advent, keep the hope alive. In Jesus' name.